Tough question, but give me a favorite draft day memory from all the drafts and all the ways that you were involved in drafts. Like, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think it's some of our favorite draft players in early rounds when I was excited. I was so excited when we were able to get Richard Seymour in 2001. But in that 2001 draft, I think one of my favorite stories was in the second round. I had previously, during the season, I would go out and scout, even though I was the vice president of player personnel, I would still go out and do some scouting the days before games if I could. So we were playing in Indianapolis in 2001, and I went to go see Purdue prior to that. And I remember going to practice and seeing Matt Light in practice. And actually, I saw that same weekend, saw Richard Seymour play at the University of Kentucky. He was with Georgia, but played at the University of Kentucky a game. But seeing Matt Light, being so excited about him, and we were sitting at 50 in the second round. We had just drafted Richard Seymour, and the Jets were right ahead of us at 49. And I would say it was probably around 45 or 46 overall pick. I pick up the phone, I call Matt Light to see if he has anything going on. That's part of the strategy part that I mentioned earlier. And I called Matt up and I said, "Hey, Matt, how you doing?" I go, "This is Pioli," because I had spoken with him several times. I said, "Have you heard from anybody?" And he goes, "Well, I'm actually on the phone with the Jets right now." I said, "Matt, don't say a word that I called." He had put them on, call waiting. I said, "Don't say a word that I've called. This call didn't happen. Sit tight." So I look at Bill. I said, "Hey, he's on the phone with the Jets, and they're one pick ahead of us at 49." So I start burning up the lines. Bill calls a couple of people. I get a hold of Matt Millen at the Lions, who was at 48. And as they go on the clock, we were able to consummate this trade. We only gave up a sixth round pick. But during that time with the Patriots, it was always so good to stick it to the Jets in any way possible, not just on Sundays
Yes.
in the fall, but you just reveled in any time that you could stick it to the Jets. And we jumped up, and while he was on the phone with the Jets on call waiting, he picks up the phone. I go, "Matt, are you still on the phone with the Jets right now?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, tell them that we just picked you. You're not available anymore." And we got Matt Light. And he went on to start with us forever, made a Pro Bowl, and
Yep.
was just such an important part of our culture and our overall team intelligence and toughness.
That's an applause story. That's a great
Yeah,
story.
it's a
I
great
think that
story.
story itself deserves applause.
Anytime you can screw the Jets, Scott,
Oh
gotta do it.
man,
Yes,
Gotta do it.
you
I
mentioned
don't feel that way anymore.
you mentioned Coach Belichick. What's he like in the draft room?
Bill and I were very similar in the draft. It was really all business. We had a very small gathering of people. We didn't have a lot of people in our draft room because we we didn't see that as a kind of a place of entertainment. It was business, and it was such important business and significant business. So we wanted to eliminate as many distractions as possible. I mean, Robert and Jonathan Kraft were, I go back to those years at the Patriots. Robert and Jonathan were in with us. Um, and then a couple of select scouts and a couple of select coaches. We would have people come in and out, but we didn't have a lot of busyness. And Bill was very dialed in, and we had a lot of conversations. The other really, really important person that was always in that draft room with us, that was very much like Bill and I on draft day, was Ernie Adams. Ernie had such an important role and impact in our organization in not just player acquisition, but in coaching as well. But Bill's, it was we were all the same. It was just all business when it came to draft day. There were a few laughs here and there. Um, I go back to one story. I remember it was a year we drafted Logan Mankins, and we had pick number 32 overall. And Bill and I had been going back and forth and joking about, the idea. He didn't like the concept or the idea of having to draft a guard in the first round, because at that point in time, the understanding in the league was that guards didn't have great value. Logan Mankins had played left tackle in college at Fresno State, but he wasn't projected to be, because kind of like Will Campbell, everyone was talking about how short his arms were and how he wasn't long enough in total stature. But during that draft, the draft was falling in a way where it looked like Logan was going to be the pick. And Bill, it was one of those drafts in that moment as we are leading up to it. he was actually very funny because we were just joking back and forth. I can't tell the jokes that were going back and forth or the words and the language that was being used when he was breaking my chops about things getting lined up for Logan Mankins. But it was a lot of it was a lot of fun because to us the work was the fun, and Bill, you know, Bill and I and Ernie had very similar personalities during the draft.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.